MP3s, not waves, and all this footage was captured before I was affiliate, so I apologize that it's like Minecraft graphics, really pixely. If you have your defensives, like, you shouldn't lose the game, bro. Okay, so here's the first game that I want to talk about. We have Arms War Disc Priest. So this is the comp that all of the other actually, I think this guy dies in the opener as well. Yeah, but this is actually just a really fast game. Because they don't play correctly. So I'll talk about what we're doing, and then I'll also describe what they should have done to win. So you can see we open right here out of stealth, and we want to stealth so that we can guarantee this opener with a Dragon's Breath onto the Arms Warrior and a cheap shot onto the Disc Priest. And this is going to ensure that both targets are CC'd at the same time. This is known as cross CC. And it is the main ingredient for Rogue Mage Goes. If you don't have cross CC, you shouldn't be doing damage. And when you have cross CC available, that is your damage window. So then, if you only have certain CCs as a rogue and a mage, certain TRs are only going to be available every 20 seconds or so, 22 or whatever. And so you'll see right here that as this Dragon's Breath falls off of the warrior, it goes onto DR for 20 seconds. So we can theoretically repeat that opener every 20 seconds because we're putting blind and stun DR and stun and poly DR on the targets, right? The point they're trying to make is that we're cross CCing. Both targets are CC'd the entire time. So I'll rewind again. Boom, CC'd, CC'd. Now they're both CC'd, and we keep them both CC'd. Now, who do you kill? So again, Warrior Healer is a great demonstration for what you should do versus all of the other specs and classes and combination and comps. But this is where you start off and like learn everything because it's just simple. It's easy to understand. Easier, I'll say. There are very few exceptions where you're going to go healer, so most of the time you're killing the DPS target. And the reason for that is because as Rogue Mage, you have so much CC available that it's far easier to stop the healing if you just use your CC on the healer rather than trying to kill through that healing. Rogue Mage just doesn't have enough damage consistently enough to be able to push through that, like let's say Windwalker Arms Warrior or Windwalker DK or DKDH, I think is really popular right now. Those combos could maybe push through the healing. And that's why they can kill healers and stuff, and why Arms Warrior has Mortal Strike that reduces healing, and like is part of their toolkit. But Rogue Mage is the opposite. They don't have those tools. So you have enough damage to kill, but it's just enough damage, right? Like there's not enough in surplus. So it's far better to just CC the healer and stop the healing. So you go DPS, and the thing that we're getting from Warrior is his 2.5 defensive cooldowns would be Spell Reflect, Die by the Sword, whatever self-healing he has, because I think they get a little bit, and his Intervene charges, mobility, I guess you could say. So it's sort of 2.5. But Warrior, very dependent on their healer. And you can see he's probably defensive stance. Hello? He should be, because that would reduce his damage taken. He's not. So if he were defensive stance, his portrait would be, instead of a human, it would be a shield. So right away, this team is making mistakes and not reducing their damage. Their healer gets stunned, and he can pain suppression the warrior in this stun, and he should know, as a healer warrior team fighting Rogue Mage, that the cheap automatically leads into a sheep. Every time. Cheap sheep. It's free. It's the main ingredient for your cross CC. But you can't just cheap sheep the healer, because then the DPS is going to stop you with a stun, or warriors especially can blade storm. So it's very important to pre-Dragon's Breath the target, pre-DB. And pre meaning before, so you're going to Dragon's Breath first, because if the warrior sees his healer get sapped, he's going to blade storm. He's going to know that he's the kill target and that his healer is the CC target. Whereas if we Dragon's Breath the warrior first, the healer can't dispel Dragon's Breath, and they also don't know if we're going to kill him or if we're going to Dragon's Breath into a sheep and then try to kill the priest. So he's unsure of where to commit. But this priest should pain sap his warrior. He doesn't, so we get the sheep. And now he can't cast pain suppression, now that he realizes who we're going. So it's up to the warrior to press a die by sword, but he can't press that until he doesn't want to use his defensive until an offensive ability has called for that defensive reaction. So as a result, he holds his main defensive until he sees my combustion. So I combust, and he gets dueled, and he also uses die by the sword, but because he's in the duel, you don't see it get popped. So he popped it really late. This is an 80% damage wall that he should have used when he still had HP left to defend. But now this little bit of this 40% reduced damage, we don't even have to do that much damage to kill him, so it's basically doing nothing at this point. He also pops Spell Reflect just in a panic, and he should try to fear and peel us as well here, but he doesn't. He goes for a Blade Storm, which stops stuns. And I mean, me and this rogue still have our trinket, so the fear might not work. But I mean, Blade Storm, this is worse. But yeah, because his healer loses his trinket to the blind, we win in the first go. And that's why this is a great example, is because it's the perfect demonstration of how strong your rogue mage goes can be whenever you use blind on the healer's trinket. So this takes a good rogue. Not all rogues are used to doing this. So it's something you kind of have to ask for and, be patient with. It's also something that you can do as the mage if you want to blind and then force that trinket, and then they cheap shot into a poly. It's a little bit, it's less guaranteed, you know what I mean? The reason that we safely full blind the healer here is because we know that we've just used our cheap shot sheep setup on him, and that he's reacted with a defensive cooldown with his trinket and PI to try to save the warrior. And he was probably going to PI and press another ability, a big heal, to try to save the warrior. But because we use blind, which is an instant cast ability right after their trinket, there's no gap for him to save the warrior. So if you don't blind after the trinket and you blind before the trinket, you're not going to have this very potent go available. So you can see my rogue actually duels into blind here, but he duels. This counts as CC because it's stopping the healing. And then out of this, he's also going to blind the healer full because the healer has no trinket. So if we don't kill this warrior by the end of this blind, I can even resheep, and you'll see that he actually goes for a shadow dance sap, or he vanish saps. So he vanished sap. So, but the point is we still have poly sap DR to use to finish him off. Now let's just do another game, I think. Because this doesn't really show what to do for resetting. So that's winning in the opener. That's winning in a single go. And your go, again, should always be on the DPS target with the healer CC'd, have cross CC engaged, and you want to use your burst in the cross CC window, because if you don't use your burst, the enemy team does not have a reason to react with their defensive cooldown. And if they don't have a reason to react with their defensive cooldown, one, they're not going to die, and two, they're going to have that available for later when they are going to die. You know what I mean? It just makes them a whole lot more tanky. And as Rogue Mage, you have enough CC to CC that target if they have their defensive up. If you're not trying to kill them because they have a defensive up, you can full CC them. And that's going into the topic of a reset. And I know you guys have probably heard of resetting from Zaryu, because that's where I first heard of this concept. And I understood that a reset meant that we were going to re-stealth and re-CC the DPS and healer, but I had no fucking clue what was proctoring them to know when that reset was warranted. I would do my damage, I would do my burst, and then try to reset because my damage was over, not necessarily because we got the opener that we needed. So I'm hopefully going to be able to explain that a little bit more clearly here. But again, maybe that was my fault. Maybe Zaryu said it and I just wasn't there. I didn't watch the video or something. But hopefully we'll get down to it here. So we open with the pre-DB cheap, just like the warrior game. I sheep the healer and we get a full stun chain onto the kill target. This healer notices that the poly's incoming on him and he presses pain suppression before the poly lands, because you can press pain suppression in a stun. So remember I was saying last game this priest didn't play as well. This priest does play well. And so he pre-PS's his target, little pokes. And so little pokes is PS. And he also trinketed the opener, the stun. And this means that any stuns that we try to put on him now are going to be DR'd, and they aren't going to be long enough to really get our damage off. So as a result, we have tried to go for our opener, which was cross CC, and then we were going to deal damage. But before we could even deal the damage, actually the second that I pressed my fucking damage, they react with a defensive cooldown. So because they've already reacted, we've opened, I've pressed my damage, and then they reacted. The go is over. All we're trying to do is get a defensive reaction. And we actually get two. This is a really, really good defensive reaction. I use my combustion that I can get back and don't even need to kill. I can just use regular pyro combos. I'm a DPS class. I have GPI. You know, combust is going to help. Obviously, we're going to need that as like part of the win condition, but we can win with just CC. Like, we don't have to revolve around combustion. We don't have to revolve around vanish or shadow dance or sepsis from the rogue. That's why it irritates the fuck out of me when the rogue just sits in stealth waiting for their burst, and then I'm getting pummeled and I die before the game is over, before they can do anything, because we're not properly rotating our DRs. So that was a mouthful. The thing I want to focus on here is that we opened, bursted, and we got a defensive reaction. So because we got a defensive reaction, and a very good one, the reset has begun. The reset doesn't start when your damage is over. It starts the second that you get the CDs you need. So because I don't have Dragon's Breath here for the rogue, because I Dragon's Breathed him out of stealth, which is kind of how most games are going to go versus rogue healer. Like, if I didn't find him in stealth, we would both open healer, and then I would Dragon's Breath the rogue off here. But it's a melee class, so it's okay. So because the reset begins here, I still have shields up. I'm just kind of getting some more damage in, and because my rogue is pretty much safe at this point, but this guy uses Cloak of Shadows, further defensive reaction to my combustion. So even though we couldn't stun him and stop this Cloak of Shadows, we could get some benefit from their healer being CC'd, right? Because their healer is going to have more work to do when he comes out. He's going to spend more mana. Or, you know, if we do the ghost properly, he should just be low the whole time. Anyways, so we get more defensives from them. And again, I'm resetting. So my rogue gets disarmed here. I can't really do anything to this rogue, but I'm looking to CC this rogue as soon as possible and stop all the damage on our team. So the cloak comes off. He kidneys my rogue. I Nova him because I didn't expect him, and then I notice the kidney. And then I get the sheep, and he trinkets this. No. it gets dispelled. The healer is really good. So the healer dispels this poly. So I should have double sheeped. But this double sheep has a little gap. But the point is that this is the result of the reset that you're looking for. Is getting the DPS to be CC'd and allowing your rogue to get a re-stealth. So we're trying to reset here. My rogue vanishes. That's fine. He's re-stealthed. He's got his stuns back up. He's got his energy. We try to keep this rogue from going out of stealth because our go is about to start. Stun and poly DRs are falling off the healer here. So because we've gotten a defensive reaction and because we've CC'd the kill target with that defensive up until that defensive has fallen down, now the rogue has no defensive once again. So the rogue is trying to kill here. He stuns my rogue and blinds me. And my rogue decides to trinket, cloak, vanish. He tries to AoE him out, which doesn't work. And he goes to gouge me and keeps CCing me. And this is when our go begins. So we could have been faster with this. Maybe, but we're waiting for this evasion, I think. So yeah, we're waiting for this evasion. So his rogue gets my rogue into a stun. My rogue trinket cloaks, so this guy evasions. And so we don't really want to have the entire burst during the evasion. So he doesn't immediately go for the step cheap or something. And he can probably also track my DB. We need DB for the go, because we're going to pre-DB the kill target. So he decides to go here with the blind, and he step cheaps, and is lucky enough to get the cheap shot off during the evasion as the evasion's falling. And this is our second go. And you could see he used blind before the trinket here. And so now it's going to be on me as the mage to try to secure the CC. But my DB sheep is going to leave a gap because blind is on the same DR table. But this priest does not have any pain suppressions left. So all he can hope to do is pretty much just like flash of light, penance, ultimate penance, something like that. And we have our kicks available, so he has to be very careful. So my rogue combines this with a duel, and I sheep, getting his trinket. So we blinded into sheep. He trinkets. So I go for a DB.
Trinket.
Sheep. And he gets the PS off on his rogue. But the rogue is just almost dead. The rogue has no trinket, the rogue has no cloak, and the rogue has no evasion. So he's just dead. If we keep the healer CC'd. And again, this could have been better if he went into a cheap shot sheep setup instead of a blind here. So he has enough time. If he waits 3 seconds for my Dragon's Breath, we can fully secure the enemy team. I have precog up right now. I don't even need the DB. So he goes for a blind, but if he goes for a cheap shot, and then we full poly, and then this healer trinkets that full poly as we're damaging the rogue like this. If the healer were to if this was a poly and he trinkets the poly, then the second that he uses his trinket, he could be instantly blind. But instead, we're in a duel here. So, the priest doesn't realize that the rogue's in a duel. That's just kind of his bad. And he was playing really well, which sucks. So then we get the sheep off and we win. A better example is going to be this next game, because that was still only 2 goes. This one is even faster, but there's more goes. So, healer rogue is holy paladin rogue is kind of like warrior healer if you had to swap to the healer during sacrifice. You know what I mean? If the priest had sacrifice. So basically, holy paladins have sacrifice, and when they use sacrifice, you want to use all of your damage onto the paladin so that he's taking 100% of the damage, as opposed to going on the DPS that he casts sacrifice onto, where he's only taking, I think it's like 80% or 70% of that damage. And then the second that you get those defensive reactions, you fucking run. You stop all the damage on your team. You vanish, greater invis, or you polymorph and CC the fuck out of the DPS target, because you've gotten your defensive reaction. So again, we open on this team. It's a rogue team. The rogue is in stealth. So I start AoEing. My rogue opens with the healer, or opens on the healer as well. And we're going to kill this healer just PvE style if the rogue doesn't do something. So the rogue has to come out here. And he stuns me, and I instantly trinket DB him. So this is the beginning of our setup. I've pre-DB'd the kill target. And we're going to land some sort of CC on the healer. And because this healer was on stun DR from that little go there, my rogue decides to blind him first, instead of doing poly into blind on the trinket, because that combo isn't as potent versus paladins who can just bubble, right? They've got trinket and bubble, so they could trinket the cheap poly and then bubble the blind or bop the blind. Or if they're a good paladin, they know that rogues do the blind on their trinket. So when they trinket, they instantly press bop so that they're immune to blind. So I actually agree with my rogue blinding before the trinket here. So he goes and he full stuns the rogue, who for whatever reason, probably to try to get me, used his trinket and gets very unlucky with the timing here. Oh my god, the rogue trinketed, bro. His pally does not. And so because this rogue is so fucking dead, my rogue decides to duel him, and I'm not even scared that there's a gap in this CC chain on the healer. Look at this healer just like depressed looking at his dead rogue.
Not know how
just gets CC'd.
He is, man.
And so then he trinkets this, but the rogue's in a duel. So I don't know what he's doing. So because I can't hit the rogue, I'm doing my damage because I've also started bursting. I'm throwing the rest of my damage onto the healer, and I'm safe to do so because the DPS is in the duel. He's CC'd. He's not going to hurt me while I'm dealing damage. So I decided to throw this damage onto the healer, and we get his bubble. God. So we got both trinkets and bubble from the opener. This is an extremely strong rogue mage opener. This is like the best case scenario from your opener. The pally also bubbles sacks, so he loses a sack charge here, even though they have two.
God, these goes are so hard.
So now the rogue is going on me, and the paladin has his bubble up. He has sacrifice and evasion up. I know that that doing any more damage to try to kill the rogue would be futile. It would be pointless. And the paladin is literally immune, so there's no point to try to deal more damage to the rogue here. So I think I go for a Nova Blink, but their paladin freedoms. He pre-freedoms the rogue. So I have to alter. They get my defensive. And because I didn't have Dragon's Breath up for the DB sheep because our go is so fast. And they're trying to like race and get us to mess up, but like it's not working. So they pre-freedom, they get my alter, I alter back. I'm just buying time, right? We're just waiting for this poly DR to fall off of the healer, because the second that this DR falls off, we can do another go. So this is how you know when your go is over. So we talked about how to open, we talked about how to reset and what proctors the reset, and now we're talking about how to know when your reset is done and when it's time for the second go. It's not when your damage is up. It's not when the fucking, you know, moon turns blue, bro. I don't know. So we wait and we get these DRs off. And so now I pre-slow the rogue. I try to put some distance. He has freedom up for another second. It's a poorly timed blast wave. So he re-stealths and runs right over to me. And the paladin pre-freedoms him again from this Nova that I tried to cast. I get DR cheaped, and they can't really stun me anymore. And my rogue, bless his heart, pre-gouges the kill target. Because he's off poly DR. So I block here, but my rogue is excited because he knows that we're going to win, and he's like, let's go, let's go, let's go. You have enough health. And I'm like, okay. So I get out of my block, and I follow up this cheap shot, right? So we have a pre-gouge on the kill target, and we always follow up our cheap shot into a polymorph, into a full sheep on the healer. and we're stopping the healing with CC, and we're dealing damage to the DPS target. And healer DPS is the most common thing that you'll see above, like, I'd say 1700. It's very rare to start seeing double DPS at these higher comps, unless it's rogue mage specifically, or just two high rated players just queuing for the fun of it. This is our second go. The DRs fell off, so we had a reset. They got our defensive. We're just buying time, waiting for the DRs. DRs are off. Go begins. Pre-gouge. Cheap into sheep. So I follow. And this is what makes it feel like jazz, because he's playing the instrument and he's waiting for me to play into this as well and start playing with him, like playing this part of the song. And like, if I don't play this part of the song, if I don't sheep and start dealing damage and popping CDs, he has to change what he's doing. He has to literally run at that point if he wants to live and save his CDs. So that's what makes you feel kind of like jazz. So you follow up the sheep, and we get a full stun chain onto the DPS. So stun DRs were off, poly DRs were off. We got a stun poly on the healer, and now we're going to deal damage to this rogue. I don't have combustion up. My pyros are not critting for anything crazy. I'm just managing this CC chain, because if we manage this CC chain, he will not get healed, and we will have enough time to kill. So I re-sheep, and it gives us just enough time. We even had one more sheep available, and I can Dragon's Breath. So we still have blind DR to use. So you don't need to wait for your damage. Just wait for the DRs and deal damage and get pressure in those DR CC windows. So let's do one more. Yeah. And this is the last one. So this one's scarier because this is DH. So, and they open up, they get me out of stealth and open on me, or no, they don't get me out of stealth, but they open on me really hard is the point. So I don't stealth, I don't have mass invis, because you want to tap the eyes off the demon hunter so that they don't stop your rogue, because your rogue, if he gets hit out of stealth and if he gets stunned, now you can't stun anything, you can't get any control. They can interrupt your polys, they can cast clones and everything. So the rogue is our priority. He's like our, the guy we got to keep safe. So you hit the DH's eyes off, you hit his spectral sight off so that he takes damage, gets into combat, and can no longer see the rogue in stealth. And their healer goes insane mode, sicko mode, convoke the spirits on me, plus demon hunter damage, and I almost die in the opener. So he hunts me into a druid stun, and so I alter, but it's kind of terrible. I alter like 50% of my life, but this is the go. So my rogue has realized that I was in a stun. I should have trinket alter pre-DB'd the demon hunter, but I don't. And so there's a small gap. The druid gets cheap shotted, and then the demon hunter gets kidneyed, but he sees his healer getting cheap shotted, so he knows he's the kill target, so he pops his defensive cooldown, his trinket. This makes things a little bit scarier for us, and he stuns my rogue, who has to use his trinket in order to re-stun the DH here. But even though it's a bumpy opener, we still actually get the win here. So they get all my life force, and I try to sheep off of this cheap shot. But the druid is in feral form, so I know I have to use Ring of Frost here. This is when my cursor Ring of Frost macro comes in really handy. You drop that, but this is also why the cursor Ring of Frost macro can bite you in the ass, because I missed this motherfucker by a singular pixel, and the ring is super delayed and really weird. And I think this druid wanted to jump over the ring, because you can do that, but he just messes up. So oh my god, sorry. Open on the DH, and he knows he's the kill target, immediately uses his defensives by trinketing and going into Metamorphosis, which allows the Demon Hunter to do crazy self-healing, and he's trinketed the first stun, so we can't re-stun him and keep him stun locked, so he's gonna be using his abilities, he's gonna be self-healing. Very smart DH. Then he sees his healer get into the ring, and he's half HP, so the druid panics and Trinket barks, Iron Barks the DH, who also uses Death from Above or whatever, fly into the air, and avoids the rogue for a bit. I think I'm fine to just LOS the missiles and deal damage to the healer because the DH is basically CCing himself. But for whatever reason, this doesn't count as LOS, and he keeps hitting me and gets my cauterize here. So I'm like, fuck.
No way, bro.
And I'm also kind of panicking because I have cauterize dot on me. I want to save this. We have no poly DR to peel the DH. So I can't even sheep him to buy time to wait for this sheep DR, this Ring of Frost DR, to fall off on the healer. So this is a really bad spot. And
She's got every defensive up.
the druid gets a re-stealth as well, which is terrible. So I try to get a re-stealth here, but the fucking Demon Hunter is a god, and pre-Ring of Fears the fucking ice block. And let me see if this timing is right. So I actually should have sat in here. If I sat in the block, he wouldn't have hit the fear, but he fucking gets the fear. He's insane. He read my brain. He read my mind. So he fears me. Now Iron Bark is off, and the Demon Hunter can die. And Poly DRs are falling off. And Stun DRs just fell off. I DB the DH, and by the grace of God, hit a double DB and DB the Druid out of stealth. So I go to ring, but it's on fucking cooldown. So I decide to just separate them and see if my rogue can cheap him out of form. Because I have Nova and I have barriers. So I have both my barriers. So I can kind of live for a second versus this DH. So I pass the druid to my rogue. And the rogue gets a cheap. And while the druid is out of form, because the rogue should be tracking my Ring of Frost, so he can tell that I don't have Ring of Frost available for the feral form. So he waits until the druid gets human form, and then full cheaps him. This is a very good rogue. Like, your rogue has to be very knowledgeable at like how mage works so that they can help you do this stuff. Or you have to tell them, right? Like, hey, we need to cheap into sheep, and we need to cheap out of form here because I don't have ring. You can communicate that over voice chat. But we're no voice right now. This rogue's just insane. He's like 3k XP, so. He cheaps him out of form, and this is the green light to go. So just a little review. We had a really tough reset because they had such a strong opener. DRs fell off. Green light, gotta do another go. Pre-DB the kill target. Also get the druid out. Don't have ring. Boom, the go is happening. The go is now. I have the cheap shot ready for me, so I have to get this DH to not kick my poly. So to get him to not kick my poly, I shimmer mid poly cast. So even if this DH wants to kick my poly, I'm fucking behind him. You can't. He's probably pressing his button, you know, and he just gets CC'd. So then I full sheep as healer with no trinket, by the way, and my rogue still has blind because we don't see blind here. So what that means is that I no longer have to do CC. I no longer have to cast poly, and I can just cast my damage. And this is going to maximize and guarantee the kill in the stun window. And we have to kill in the stun window because this Demon Hunter still has his 2 defensive cooldowns, Blur, Darkness, and even Shadow Meld is sort of like racial cooldown, is sort of half defensive cooldown. And that's why Night Elf is so strong, because you can add that to any class. Anyways, so
now
let's see what happens here. I try to maximize damage outside of my combust. I have no combust. I'm meteor, and I have my Master Shepherd buff, so we're kind of dealing enough damage. And my rogue could blind off the poly. That would probably be better. But instead, I decided to triple sheep into blind to buy us the most CC time. Just in case. Because if we overlap this 2-second poly and blind, or this 3-second poly and blind, that's not a huge deal as leaving a gap in the CC. Because if there's a gap, this druid is going to save the Demon Hunter somehow. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the rogue has blind, because we see on his on the Omni CD add-on, We see Shadow Step. We see Shadow Dance. Holy shit. Vanish and Trinket, but we don't see Blind. So if he used Blind, they would be up here. But the healer has no Trinket, so this is when the Blind is called for on the healer. This rogue is insane, and he decides to duel. And this actually ends up biting us in the ass. So you should blind. He should blind here, but he doesn't.
Hopefully.
So he duels, which kind of stops the CC.
AoE.
I try to AoE in the duel to try to kill this Demon Hunter, and he doesn't die because he's out of the stun chain, and he didn't even have to blur darkness. He just had to hit the rogue and leech. So the rogue tries to go for more CC here.
Scorch.
And it just
Fireball,
doesn't happen.
Scorch. Anything. It's not enough. Wow.
And he gets full healed. And I'm just like, what? Like, this happens so fast, bro. And so the rogue decides to save blind for the third go. That's fine. We're on go number 2 right now. My altar's coming back up. We have poly DRs available for the DPS. We can 100% make it to a third go.
Kill here. Hopefully.
And my rogue knows this. He knows that if we finish the go on the DH, there's no poly DR on the DH. All the poly DRs are on the healer.
Scorch. Fireball. Scorch.
I don't know how he fucking died here, bro.
Anything. It's not enough. Wow. How did this Demon Hunter?
So I immediately start trying to peel the DH. I spam Sheeps. I use a Nova here. I try to stop the clone. He clones me. Shoots my CS. But my rogue gets a re-stealth, so it's okay.
Pre-alter the stun.
Pre-alter time because they get my defensive here because I have no trinket, and because I haven't been able to lock down the Demon Hunter. Ideally, you triple sheep the DPS while peeling before you use Frost Nova on them in arena when they have a healer, because if they dispel one of the polys, you can instantly re-sheep them. And then if they have no dispel, if you know the healer doesn't have dispel, you can full Ice Nova, which is Frost Nova. You can full Frost Nova them, which is actually 8 seconds from the talent instead of 6 seconds from poly, and they can't be dispelled from the root because they got dispelled by the poly earlier. So it's better to triple sheep into Nova, but instead I Nova into sheep, and that causes the first sheep Nova to be dispelled, and then I try to re-sheep, but he LOSs me, tries to chase the rogue. My rogue gets away, so I know I'm the target now. They can't hit my rogue. They're going to try to maximize DPS on me. So I pre-alter the second they look my direction because I know that the goes are going to go on me now.
Spamming it.
I live because they didn't have anything to follow up the stun. And my rogue gets bashed. I pre-DB the D8 or the druid, which is bad because we still have blind. And the healer... So because the reason blind doesn't happen in this game is because I have a bad DB. So because I Dragon's Breath the healer, my rogue doesn't want to use blind until that DR falls off so that we get max value out of those cooldowns. Stop. Go back to your cage. You have toys in here. Alright. Sorry, bird was chewing table. So yeah, ideally we get a blind. I mean, maybe the rogue blinded the DH in duel, because if whatever the rogue presses in duel does not register on your Omni CD, just so you know. Our third go happens. We cheap into sheep, and my rogue gets a kidney. I pre-GPI here because I know this is gonna happen. So, the reset is rough. They get my defensive, but we can go now because stun DRs are off DPS, poly DRs are off healer. So my rogue, I pre-DB, I tried to pre-DB the DH and I missed, and I hit the druid. And so my rogue goes for the cheap shot here. And this Ring of Frost was also supposed to be like off of that DB, but I think the DB breaks, right, from the rogue hitting him. Wait. Yeah, the rogue breaks the DB. So rogue breaks DB, so I can't use Ring of Frost with that DB, so we basically lose the blind DR, and we lose blind. We can't blind anymore, so we have less CC now, which is a little stressful, but I've got combustion coming up, so it's looking like we might be able to win here. Third go. So I Ring of Frost for the Druid, but I actually half ring the DPS, which is kind of good. You pre-CC a little bit, and then my Rogue gets the cheap shot. I'm gonna follow this cheap shot with a polymorph, a full sheep. So I know that sheep is a 1.2 second cast, and that I actually have enough time to finish casting this GPI on the kill target and then follow up the CC on the healer. And I knew that my Rogue was going to begin the go here because the DRs were off. So without even being in voice chat with him, I knew when we were going to deal damage. So I used Greater Pyroblast before the damage window actually starts, so that when we get the CC, the cross CC, the double stun into a poly stun, now the Greater Pyroblast has landed. And then I get a lucky time anomaly. My Rogue does really big damage as well. The Meteor lands, finish him off with a Pyro combo. He dies in a single poly. So he actually dies in like 3 seconds. Like, our damage starts here. As soon as the healer gets sheep, that's when you can start counting. 1, 2, 3.
Pre-GPI to go.
4, he's dead. You know, the stat priority for me. So, to review, you have the opener, which should initiate cross CC, and versus Arms War Healer, versus classes that can stop your opener, it's important to pre-Dragon's Breath the go. So you Dragon's Breath the DPS so that they don't use a defensive, so that they don't stop your opener, and your Rogue gets a sap on the healer or a cheap shot into a polymorph. And then you full stun combo the DPS, and you should always be killing the DPS. You do your go, and then when you get a defensive reaction, you reset. So let's show that as well. So we do our opener, and we get a defensive reaction, and now we begin to reset. The reset involves the Rogue re-stealthing and the Mage peeling the DPS with spam polys and Nova. So I can't do that yet because Cloak is up. Cloak falls off. I Nova first, big mistake. I poly, it gets insta dispelled. I have no more CC, gotta re-sheep. That could have been way better. Spam sheep, vanish. He gets stunned. My Rogue trinket vanishes because stun and poly DRs are off. So I know he's going to deal damage right here. So if I didn't get Shuriken stormed out of that. Oh shit. Don't shoot this, bro. Okay, it still works. It's just chewing the Mac power cord. Holy shit. I'm just going to look down and there's going to be a chicken nugget under my table, bro. What the fuck? Stop. I'm trying to get electrocuted. You know when your reset is over, when the defensive reaction has fallen away, and the DRs are reset. So we initiate with blind. We do stuns. We're combining the stun with the CC on the healer. Ooh.
Damn, these guys got wrecked.
And let's go back to... Actually, let's just do this one. We'll finish here. And then I'm going to go back to the beginning. Let's actually have one. Open, stun with damage. The kill target's there. CC healer.
Oh my god, the Rogue trinketed, bro.
With damage.
His pally does not know how
we got a defensive reaction. We get more defensive reaction. More defensive reaction. Cloak. Sack. Bubble.
Oh
more.
my god, these goes
Now
are
we
so
reset.
hard.
So the reset is in reaction to the defensive cooldown and the end of our CC chain, which ends with the duel. So we get a stun into we get a blind into a sheep, into a duel. And so once all that CC is done, now we reset. I try to sheep this rogue, but I know that he has his kick available and he can interrupt me, and that I don't have Dragon's Breath, and I can't Nova him because he just got freedom from his healer. So I decided to alter time to stop and save my health, stop the damage, and run around him in a circle. Kite with the blast wave. He gets my block because he does a big secret tech or abyss or something right as we're about to do our damage. So ideally, I blink here, but he stuns me, and right as the stun is ending, boom, big damage. So because I'm in 30% health territory, I'm gonna block here. Hey, shh, I'm talking. Shut up. She wants me to get off the stream, bro. She's literally like crying at me. So we block here because my health is low, and because our go has not started yet. We can still save the go for when my health is higher. But because they had such a horrible opener and used so many defensive cooldowns in reaction to our opener, we knew, me and the rogue know at this point that we have the win. So my rogue sets up the next go, and I go along with it because I know that we have enough damage to kill in the CC window. So we CC, kill damage. They have no trinkets. There was a little gap here, but so the rogue might have been able to cloak, but I'm just re-sheeping his healer anyway. So he eventually takes that damage and dies. Now to start the video over. What we do, what you want to do versus DPS healer where they are stealthed is make sure that your rogue is stealthed and then take mass barrier so that you get value out of that last talent slot. And you don't just take mass invis and have it fall off. So you go in there, wait. They're both stealth. There's nothing you can do. You can run around on your map and mount and try to find them, but you're basically just waiting for them to open. The hunter opens on me. I pre-DB into, I'm thinking it's going to be a sheep or a ring so that I can CC the hunter myself and get the druid to come out. But the druid comes out immediately. So I go along with my sheep on the hunter, pre-sheep, whatever. We get the rogue out, or get the druid out. And so this is where I sheep.
Sheep the healer off that.
Cheap sheep.
Here we go.
And we're combining this CC on healer with a full stun chain on the DPS.
We're gonna try to kill through rock.
Boom! There it is, dude. Those are the one-shot clips that I'm looking for. And same thing happens here. Wait for them to open. I'm hitting their healer so they open. We have our kill target available. And you don't want to initiate your CC until your kill target is available. We're not killing the Mistweaver Monk. So my rogue does not sap the Mistweaver Monk or stun the Mistweaver Monk. He lets me 1v1 him and just deal damage waiting for the hunter to come out. The hunter has to stop me from dealing damage to his healer. Because I can just kite the Mistweaver. He can't deal damage to me. I would win in dampening. So by dealing damage to his healer, I force the hunter out. The hunter comes out. And I pre-DB. So to give my rogue some space to CC. But my rogue is really quick, and he instantly throws out a blind. I follow it up with a sheep here. So the healer doesn't trinket. And the hunter trinkets, but gets re-stunned and doesn't turtle. So I think he was trying to trinket turtle and communicates to his healer, I missed the trinket turtle. This game is over already. AFK, go next. So they just don't react, but it's really fast. So yeah. And then a good reset is going to begin the second that the kill target has a defensive up, or the second that they aren't going to die for any reason, whatever it is. Even if it's an arms warrior who's just using Blade Storm, they're not going to die because you can't stun them. And if you can't stun them, they can use their defensive cooldowns at will. So if you're going up against something like a DK that has IBF, which immunes them to stun, that they can press in a stun, and AMS that they can cast if they see you casting Poly, then you're going to have to instantly CC the DK as his IBF comes up, because if he gets out of the stun and is immune to stuns, he's also able to make himself immune to Poly. But if you blind the IBF into a sheep, he can't press AMS, gets CC'd for the reset, then doesn't have IBF for another 3 minutes. So you go DK again, if you follow me here. And now you're able to get the kill. But the reason that you swap off earlier when they use IBF is because you know you're not going to be able to kill the DK with the stun immune up and their damage wall up. And you know that you can't sheep them. They're going to AMS. So, alright guys, I'm going to go. Short outro today, but GG's. I'm fucking tired. My voice is tired. My bird is tired. But, let me see. Pop out chat. We will be back again next time.